Okay, think back to the very first time you ever tried to drive a car. Remember that? Your hands were probably gripped super tight on the steering wheel at 10 and 2. Every single movement, checking the mirrors, pushing the brake, trying to judge the distance of the car in front of you, it all took just immense, exhausting focus. It was a massive cognitive load. But contrast that with your morning commute today. You probably pull into your driveway without even really remembering the physical act of driving there. So how does that actually happen? How do deliberate, agonizingly slow choices completely transform into effortless actions? Well, in today's explainer, we're going to dive deep into the fascinating mechanics of human behavior, and we're going to uncover exactly how we wire ourselves for success through the things we do every single day.
So I really want you to consider the invisible engine that makes difficult tasks feel completely natural. We all know that willpower is, well, it's a finite resource. If you rely solely on willpower, just power through your day, you're absolutely going to burn out. It's inevitable. So why is it that some things require this draining amount of willpower, while other really beneficial behaviors just seem to happen completely on autopilot, bypassing all that friction entirely? Honestly, it all comes down to the architecture of automatic action. So take a second to think about that. What actually makes a good choice effortless?
All right, let's jump right into Section 1, Defining a Habit.
Our source material establishes a remarkably clear baseline for us here. A habit is simply the things we do again and again, consistent actions performed repeatedly over time. Now that sounds simple, right? But for those of us studying human behavior, the implications of that simple definition are literally massive. You see, the brain, which is an incredibly energy-hungry organ, by the way, is constantly looking for ways to conserve cognitive energy. It honestly doesn't care about grand one-off gestures. Those actually cost way too much energy to perform. The brain cares entirely about frequency. When we repeat a good choice, it sends a powerful signal to the brain that this action is important and hey, it needs to be optimized. So the brain begins to physically rewire itself. It paves this neurological highway so that the action requires less and less energy to execute. These are things that become easy simply because we do them often, which offloads all that heavy processing power from active decision-making into deep, super-efficient routines.
To put this into perspective, just consider everyday actions like brushing your teeth or tying your shoelaces. In our source's visual guide, there's actually a character named Sunny doing exactly this. And when you watch Sunny, her actions are completely smooth. There's zero hesitation. She isn't standing at the bathroom sink intensely analyzing the exact angle of her toothbrush, and she definitely isn't calculating which loop of the shoelace goes under the other. Think about the immense friction a toddler faces when learning to tie their shoes for the very first time. It's like a really slow, frustrating puzzle. But for Sunny, the puzzle is totally solved. And this beautifully illustrates the ultimate goal of habit formation. Repetition simplifies tasks that once required intense, focused concentration, moving them completely into the background of our consciousness.
Moving right along to Section 2, the architecture of action.
Now, you don't just wake up one day with a fully formed habit, right? You actually have to build it through a highly specific architecture. Step 1 is where the friction is at its absolute highest. You make a positive choice. You actively decide to engage in a beneficial behavior. This requires your prefrontal cortex. It takes active, conscious energy. And frankly, it can be pretty uncomfortable at first. Then comes step 2, which I like to call the messy middle. You use repetition. This right here is exactly where most people abandon their goals. You have to repeatedly choose to engage in that activity, really pushing through the initial clunkiness. You are actively forging the path. But if you can hold the line through step 2, you reach the holy grail, step 3. The action becomes automatic. By just keeping up that repetition, the task simplifies itself neurologically. It actually gets handed off to the basal ganglia, which is the part of the brain responsible for automatic behaviors. And at that point, it requires zero active decision-making.
Just look at the stark contrast we have here. Before habit forms, the behavior demands your complete attention. It requires really deliberate choice. It takes real, tangible effort. It's heavy mental lifting. But once that architecture actually takes hold, the friction completely vanishes. The whole thing becomes smooth, it becomes easy, it fires off rapidly and instinctively without a single conscious thought. The struggle simply ceases to exist.
Which brings us to our final part, Section 3, Building Personal Patterns.
So the sources we're exploring in this explainer were actually originally designed as an educational guide for children. But honestly, the underlying psychology here is universally applicable, especially for adults who are aiming for high performance. It explains perfectly how simple, repeated routine actions ultimately transform into lasting personal patterns. And let me tell you why this matters so deeply. You aren't just tying a shoelace, or drinking a glass of water every morning, or putting on your running shoes. No. You are programming a permanent positive sequence into your daily life that eventually alters your very identity. Through these lasting personal patterns, you stop being, someone who is trying to run every day, and you simply become a runner. The routine action literally transforms who you are on a fundamental level.
If you take away just one single thing from our whole explainer today, let it be this core insight right here. Consistency is the primary driver in making beneficial choices feel natural. It is absolutely not about intense, fleeting motivation. Motivation is flaky, right? It will totally abandon you when you're tired or stressed out. But the sheer power of just showing up, day after day, completely regardless of how you feel, that is the only way to genuinely rewire your brain. Consistency is literally the code that writes the software of your habits.
So, I want to leave you with this to chew on. Take a hard look at your own daily routines. How are you going to use this invisible engine of repetition to build your own lasting personal patterns? Try identifying just one positive choice today. Fully expect that initial friction. Repeat it again tomorrow, and then just watch as the impossible slowly becomes completely effortless.